This is the Fakeologist Show. We do the show Sunday through Thursday around 8 o'clock p.m. Welcome to all the good listeners out there, including all the listeners from IPS. IPS has a huge following on Discord and an infinite number of platforms, and he is linked to us now generously with all his multitude of channels. And how you doing, Tim Ozman, tonight?
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me on. And this is the Infinite Platform Society.
Yeah,
And yeah,
that's right.
this should be good. So I expect a lot from our chat. We've been getting really busy in the chat rooms these last few live streams. It's hard to keep up. So this should be interesting. And we'll be responsive. So anybody has any questions, and I believe they can call in, but you can count on us responding to your comments.
Yeah, that's right. You can call into the hotline, or you can actually join in. My restream link is open, so anyone can join into the restream. It's a permalink, shortfake.com/restream. Anyone can join in and say hi. Obviously, just put your name there, and you don't come right into the studio. We just sort of admit you, and we're ready to chat. Otherwise, there's phone lines, and I'll put those at the bottom of the screen somewhere here. My numbers are perma numbers as well, 810-666-1984 or 902-400-1984. I'll open those lines. I think, Tim Osman, you have lines as well that are semi-permanent.
Yeah, right now I'm with the Blog Talk Radio, which has some advantages to it. So it's a new number. It's not the same one I usually use, but I'm still kind of on a trial with it. I'm giving it a few months to see if people like it because it allows me to have a caller queue and people
Yeah.
can listen. So it has some features I like, but we'll see. I might try what you're testing out here as well, or what you're using.
Yeah, is that a visual cue? Do you see the calls?
Yeah, it gives me a call queue, and then I can just go through and unmute or
Mm,
remute, and I don't even have to hang up on them necessarily, and they can listen on speakerphone while they're waiting
okay.
to be called. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, I don't have listening while you're on hold yet. That's sort of at the bottom of my list. I know some people complain that they can't hear the show when they're on hold, but they can still tune into the live stream. It's almost at the same time stamp as the phone call. I think it might be a little bit behind, but not too much. And that's what most people that call into my show do. I sent this service I've been using for a couple of years to you a couple of years ago because if you did use it, I'd get a referral code. And it's just a really super flexible IP phone management website, and it's extremely wide open in terms of how you customize it. So I just grabbed a few satanic phone numbers that I got lucky on, and that way I just don't have to keep changing phone numbers. And even if I did have another service, I could forward those numbers to whatever number I'm using, so people could just get used to it. So it's a
Pretty much
minor thing.
all numbers these days are considered satanic by the people who are number
Mm.
phobic. I have a 999 in mine, and that
Yeah.
has a lot of them mad. And it's like, well, you can't win if they're going to use a gematria calculator and then turn it into something. It's going to add to something ominous. So all numbers are pretty much evil of people. It's that whole thing. If your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And there's a lot of that in Trutherville. It's kind of a typical methodology.
Yeah, I'm not really a gematria person. I find it entertaining and it's interesting. I think there are certain numbers that are repetitive and sort of hoax code, like 33 and 9 and 11, I suppose. But overall, I don't put too much credence in it. I guess Zach Hubbard, who I want to have on my show one more time, he's using it for gambling purposes, which is just awesome because the revenue that gambling brings in is incredible. And I guess he only has to be around 50% right, which is a coin toss, to get a pretty good crowd, a pretty good following. So
Yeah.
it's a good angle, and yeah, and he's so fast at talking numbers and adding them up on his calculators that it seems like he's a genius, really.
I think a lot of what you see with these gematria calculators amounts to the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, which means they draw a target after they've already fired all their shots, and then they find a tight grouping, and they super focus on that, and they ignore the misses. and it creates this perception that they have predicted something. I'm not accusing him of that, but it's very easy to fall into that as a fallacious way of approaching things and just kind of not being hypercritical of one's own methods. However, it is obviously true that that whatever we're looking at on the news, this strange scripting, yeah, there's obviously a lot of significance placed in certain numbers. It's so obvious you can't even ignore it. It'd be reality
Yeah.
denialism to say it's not there. Whether the numbers have intrinsic meaning, yeah, I don't know if that even matters. We're talking about deciphering some kind of code,
Yeah.
and that's pretty much my position on it.
Yeah, and the fact that there's an infinite number of calculators, it seems, it's too much, and I guess there's a calculator that fits every story. So it's sort of fake reverse engineering, it seems.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of my take on it. I arrived at this after the Super Bowl. A lot of people with the gematria calculators were insistent that it was going to get nuked when Taylor Swift arrived, and it didn't happen. And I realized none of these people are saying, "My bad, this is how I got it wrong." They just gloss over their wrong answers and move on to the next bad prophecy. And I decided, hey, after the eclipse, no more false prophets. I'm deleting these people, and I have, because so many people predicted that the eclipse on 4/8 would be a big deal, and it was a massive nothing burger.
Well, I found it we're in Toronto here, we were right in the pathway of the eclipse, we were in the 99% zone, and it actually was pretty amazing as far as it's my second eclipse, and I just knew that it was gonna get dark, and I wanted to experience that, and that's exactly what happened. It did get dark for about 5 minutes, and it is kinda bizarre, but, of course, when there's a big thunderstorm, it also gets pretty darn dark as well, but this was a little different, and I was able to watch the eclipse with my camera. I'm pretty sure Samsung didn't substitute their imagery for what I was pointing my Samsung device at, but, I still think it was pretty awesome, and I don't really have a good astrological explanation other than just believing whatever the nature of the solar system is, as we're told, and, I enjoyed it, but no, I really wasn't worried about the end of the world any more than any other day.
Did you have the glasses on that allowed you to look at it directly with the dark
No,
lenses?
because well, there was a lot of cloud cover, so I got to see it in between cloud cover. We had pretty low cloud that day, so I didn't I looked at it through the camera. I wasn't worried about burning my eyes because it was fairly diffused, but it was still extremely noticeable. I could see the circle of the sun, and I saw the moon covering it up, or the second moon, or the black moon, or whatever. Something was covering it up. So, yeah, I actually videoed it, and I think I put it on FakeOtube,
Okay, okay.
fakotube.com. So it is there, and that is my video. So now I've taken a picture of the moon before with my Samsung S23 device, and, that's when I learned that I was suspicious of it, and I had an amazing picture, and then someone said it's because Samsung substitutes its library of pictures either via the device's ROM, or maybe it's pulling it through the internet and putting it in my gallery saying I took it. So that kinda concerned me. I don't know if you've
Interesting.
heard of that.
I do remember that, and maybe you can find an article related for people who haven't heard of it. I do recall something about the moon.
Mhm.
If you but let me see. I think it was at 2023 we had the total eclipse. I think I saw that one. I was fortunate to park somewhere where a lot of people had those glasses. They were passing them out, and when you're directly looking at it, and
Mhm.
it was the Ring of Fire. It looked like the Eye of Sauron, and it did go strangely dark everywhere.
Yeah, it was
It's really
very dark. It definitely obscured the sun. Yeah, I videoed it. I have it here, so this is my video. I don't know if let me turn on the
Eclipse
volume.
here. Oh, this is so cool.
Let's see if we can kind
We're
of
getting a
this.
view of the
My
eclipse.
commentary is kind of a name,
Oh,
so
this is so cool. This is really, really cool. We got a little bit of a peek.
anyway, that is
Look at that sun. Can I zoom in anymore? Oh, neat.
yeah. So you can see
Oh,
there
it's
was
really hard
cloud
to hold
cover,
the
but
camera. Wow.
I didn't need to use any special glasses. Maybe I don't know why. I looked at it through the camera. Maybe that helped. But you can see that's pretty neat.
That is so cool. Look how fast it's moving away. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I'm having a good time here. Look at
As I
that.
told you, I work at the airport, so that I'm right under a runway there. So
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah, no, not a chemtrail in sight, unfortunately. And someone accused me of saying, "Well, why would they don't chemtrail at the airport?" Okay, well, so
I love that
yeah.
one. I actually have that in my list of points of my debate. You never see chemtrails over the airports where all the airplanes are. Isn't that
Yeah.
kind of weird? I guess they switch it off, and it's all because no, that's where they land, and their altitude is too low to put them over
Mhm.
airports. And yeah, what you were talking about, it's the Samsung phone that it's what is it? The space zoom feature was
Yeah.
said to be, yeah, the S23 Samsung Galaxy has a space zoom, and they've been caught. I guess what are they doing? Digitally enhancing or
I
something?
think
But
it's a substitution. I zoomed in on the moon and I took the picture and I couldn't believe how good the quality was because I've had seen other people with their Apple phones and it's pretty hard to take a picture of a full moon. I'm talking about a full moon, so um I one day I had this amazing image with my Samsung camera. Now I have a P900. It takes really great pictures of the full moon as well. And I often thought that maybe they're built into the ROM of the camera. It's because someone took a picture of their computer screen, which had a full moon on it, and it looked like their picture when they went outside. So anyway, there's a little bit of suspicion there. I can't prove anything, but it's just
okay, but consider this. I mean, we're talking about this ubiquitous screen that they use to augment our realities, like they used to do with just basic media, even literature like religions, where you can impose belief systems and constructs into people's minds just through repetition. And these days, it's all done with the screen, where you watch it on TV and then you believe it. Well, now we're becoming increasingly immersed in this simulation, in the uh, this it's what I refer to as a monolithic immersive illusion. But it just seems like if we can't trust our screens because they're lying to us, what happens when we can't trust our screens because they can manipulate it real time, like, augmented virtual reality? And
yeah.
would it be possible, for example, if they wanted to fake space junk Armageddon or a nuke and Fallout? I don't think it'd be difficult for them to, you know, it's even more fakeable than ever, I'm saying. It's practically like we have Oculuses on our heads.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, so there's my that's my eclipse photo. I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was pretty firsthand. That's as firsthand as I could get. And it was pretty cloudy that day, so I was pretty happy that there were some cracks in the crowd there in the
You know, I
cloud.
I really do enjoy going to the eclipse, and when I watch these things and I observe these things, it doesn't make me think, "Oh, look, an eclipse. Therefore, man landed on the moon,
Yeah,
and
there's no
therefore there's a space
association.
station." I don't even make that association. And by the way, did you catch Candace Owens talking about NASA faking moon landings and doing satanic rituals?
I try and avoid Candace Owen. I did watch her latest yeah, I did watch some of her NASA stuff. And you pointed out on one of your last broadcasts about the new moon faking management movie with Scarlett Johansson, which
Fly
I
me to the moon. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm gonna have to download that when it's made available for the pirates of the world, and try and watch it. I called it just from the trailer a hybrid between Capricorn One and Wag the Dog. It seems like they brought both elements together to
Oh,
mock.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. And it won't be a big like some people will say, "Oh, they're
Hmm.
waking people up. This is a truth bomb." No, this is just deepening the illusion. And if anything, that people are going to walk away with, well, if they did fake it, it was to trick the Russians. And at no point does space is fake enter the equation.
Yeah, I just call it hoax management. Really, you can't stop the river. Somebody said that on most of the NASA official websites or the promoters of NASA that at least half the comments are just saying space is fake. So it looks like they're just trying to steer that runaway train to where they want it to go with some kind of plausible deniability. But I don't know if enough people care about the fact that they're being faked and hoaxed by NASA, or I'm just not sure it matters anymore.
I agree. It's not really within anybody's area of interest. They're what I call low information believers.
Mhm.
And and also low information non-believers. When they're told not to believe something, they don't investigate it first. They're just like, "Oh, okay, I won't believe it." And I make this point that there's a major qualitative difference between low info believers and informed non-believers. Like we tend to know a lot about the stuff we don't believe in, and they just passively accept it. And so no, they're not in a position to suddenly accept this is true. The people who aren't concerned with fake space, there are some leaps you have to take. There's some investigation. You wouldn't expect someone to just flip a switch. So Candace Owens doing this stuff, all she's doing is getting clicks. It's going to get her clicks, gets people to look at it for a minute, and then the spotlight moves on. But
Yeah, I
that's
think she's been kind of released from, what is it, the Daily Beast as sort of this rogue broadcaster element that she is now going to tell the truth now that she's gotten away from the Ben Shapiro sphere of influence. I think that's what they're doing with her, where
that's
she's
her.
getting a little,
That's
yeah.
it. 100%. Daily Wire let her go because she disagreed over 10-7. And now she's trying to be this rogue thing.
Huh.
Interestingly, though, she accuses NASA of being satanic, and she has recently converted to Catholicism. Well, it
Mm,
turns out
right.
that Buzz Aldrin did the Catholic Eucharist, the Mass, on the moon, and they had
Okay.
wine. And so you could argue that NASA's covertly Catholic, an Egyptian mystery school, but you're not going to call it satanic. That doesn't make sense. But anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. I just found that out that Buzz Aldrin literally had communion on the moon.
Yeah, in the movie studio. Well, someone I know brought up this little tidbit. Maybe he saw it on one of the social medias, but it's an older story about Big Bird. I thought my this person was kind of mocking me or my beliefs, but he brought up the story, and it looks like it was from 2018, updated in 2023, that Big Bird was supposed to be on Challenger, the exploding space shuttle, and I thought that it was a bit of a I thought he was spoofing me, and I thought he was only bringing it up because the Challenger explosion astronauts being walking around to this day was recently brought up by the guy that went in front of Brevard County, Florida, which is the county that has the Kennedy Space Center, and he was I don't know if you saw that guy, and I'm not sure about that guy either, if he's the real deal or not, because he was featured on Stupid Peters, and who was promoting it, and I guess he's one of the biggest mainstream alternative media personalities. So I thought, okay, now this story, I don't know who broke this story 10 years ago. It might have been Simon Shack at Clues Forum or somebody around that was showing that there's evidence that every single one of these Challenger victims is walking around today in plain sight. So I thought that maybe he was bringing up the Big Bird story in association with this Challenger story that has resurfaced and been elevated by the mainstream alternative media. So,
Okay, okay. And the person you're talking about is Justin Robert from We Are Change.
yeah. Okay, that's right.
I actually met him in Denver.
Oh, wow.
For, and he had done the city council ISS underwater, kind of like what I did, and he got a similar effect. He's confronted astronauts. Is he legit or not? Yeah, I don't think he's a full-blown auto hoaxer. I'm sure.
Okay.
I mean, what he's doing is useful, but I also know he's also confronting people in the streets about from an anti-vax perspective, going after city councilors. So, he's an activist. He's probably rogue. I don't think he's got anybody pulling his strings because he's the one who's gone into astronauts' face and asked about bubbles, and they just look flustered. But, I wouldn't be surprised, either way. But the
Okay,
Big
so you're
Bird,
you're confident that he's the real deal then?
well, so far everything he's done has been very useful to us, but that's all I can really say. I mean, it could be somebody
Okay.
paralleling what we're doing, but the
Yeah.
fact is that this is useful to bring up, but I'm trying to ensure that we put the stuff in the right context and
Yeah.
full on fakery. But I'll have to interview. Maybe you should reach out to him, interview him, find out how
Yeah,
he's
I
gone with
think I
this.
sent him some kind of contact, maybe through Twitter. It's always hard to say if they received the request or they're ignoring it. I can't tell. But I think I did punch him a message just to see if he was the real deal. But, yeah, You've done similar things where you go in front of city council,
Oh yeah, yeah.
which is very brave for sure, putting your
Well, we
name and face out there.
well the whole point of it. Well, I put Mark Sargent's name out there, but
Oh,
the whole
that's
point,
true. Yeah.
the whole point of it though was let's put this on the record in such a way that it goes viral outside of YouTube's ability to contain it.
Mhm.
And that was our MO at the time, and it certainly worked. I mean, but it can't work every single time. And I mean, there are some people who've gone viral using city council meetings, but going viral for its own sake is putting, I think, quantity over quality. So I haven't done that lately, but
Mhm.
it is an interesting tactic. It works in some instances.
Yeah, well, I think it's starting to, get a lot of blowback from the city councils. I know my city council has banned anyone that, is either from outside the area, from making a deputation, or if they're off topic. And I know a lot of these city council meetings at the end have an open forum, but, I just think there's gonna be a lot of blowback, and they're gonna lock down these meetings.
Yeah, I recall after I did this one here,
Mhm.
you know, it was like they didn't know what to say. They didn't know if I was being serious or what to do with it. So there's no repercussions, but
Yeah.
yeah, this has been, like, exploited quite often, but I have seen blowback by people who have exploited it to do their comedy routines,
Yeah.
and there's been pushback, but, it's a free speech issue. They've always had to have a little steam valve for the kooks that's
Yeah.
open, but there are other avenues if people really wanna exploit, and I have a lot of ideas when it comes to getting ideas out of the YouTube contained echo chambers, and that's the only way these things go anywhere. There's just so much what you call hoax management going on.
Mhm. Well, I think NASA's always gotta be hoax managed, so but this Challenger thing, when it went to the level of Stupid Peters, I thought that was a big event, I thought. And they cut off, Simon Shaka Clues Forum is the one that made the graphic, and they made sure to cut off any attribution to him and his little icon at the bottom that mentioned his website, so I thought that's not good. I always try and attribute at least to show the
Yeah.
people that do the work, at least did the graphic. I don't know if he broke the story 10 years ago, but,
That's unethical. Honestly, it is because
yeah.
what we're trying to do is build a network of people who are paying attention, and they're just harvesting content for their own little myopic views. Like Stu Peters put me on his platform,
Oh, okay.
that video, the city council video, and he just referred to me as this guy, and he got
Oh, okay.
350K hits, which is great.
Oh,
But
wow.
he could easily have put at and had shared subs. But at the same time, do I want to be associated with his crowd because I think he's there to contaminate the whole area of
Yeah,
discourse that
poison
we're
the well,
involved
huh?
in. He's like, look, tweet this guy because he says NASA's faking the space station. And then his next tweet, he's walking down some country road with a noose about to lynch somebody. And he's like, let's organize lynchings. And I'm
Oh, is that
thinking, wait,
right?
oh
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
well, they canceled his meeting, but he was going to do this thing called, I believe it was called, I think it was called total accountability, no,
Mhm.
extreme accountability, and they canceled it because he was gonna suggest militias and basically lynch mobs. At least that's what you would think by his promotional materials. So I realized this guy's just out there to put shock and just basically contaminate this area. So now, if you question NASA, now you're affiliated with Nazis and hate mongers, etc. I don't know how much of what he's saying is legitimate, how much of it is just um, attention getting and clickbaiting. And if you dig into Stu Peters, it's kind of interesting his relationship with Lauren Witzke, who's hilarious, another troll. But these are all
Okay.
just, I think these are all just contracted to be racist right wing trolls. But there's a ton of infighting with these people. They're kind of eating each other right now because Stu Peters did the documentary Suddenly Dead or something,
Died
and
suddenly, yeah.
I don't know what happened exactly, but it seems like he's cut a lot of people out of the revenue streams, and then he bashed Lauren Witzke for not having a pure white husband and ripped on their baby. So it's gotten
Wow.
really nasty. I
Oh,
kind
is
of
that
follow
right?
them. I follow them for kicks, but yes.
Well, you're braver than I don't follow Stupid Peters at all, but, I always am interested when things that we talk about show up there and how they're gonna manage it, and Candace Owens another one, I don't really wanna pay attention to her, and, yeah, so
Well, she's making these posts about the Earth being flat, and then I see a lot of prominent flat earthers like David Weiss and Witsit Gets It clamoring for her platform. And this is what I will not do. I would not want to be platformed. I would not want to be um, I wouldn't want to be a guest with Stu Peters. You know, if I was speaking to him or if there's any interaction, I'm highly critical of him, and I wouldn't want to tacitly endorse someone like that. You know, it's like one minute they're chatting you up and you're on the platform, the next minute they got a Klan hood. It just looks bad. And Candace Owen is just as bad. In fact, I think she's worse than any of these others because she has a very shallow take anyway. She didn't add anything to the conversation about Jack Parsons and NASA. She just took
All right.
this historical fact, in quotes, and put it in the context of science is bad, embrace religion and traditional values. And that's part of, I believe, one of their general strategies, getting the people who lean right, who are critical of mainstream media, to hate science because they're not making a distinction between science as an ideology and science as a methodology. So nothing she has adds any value. But anyway, um, you were saying something about Big Bird. I don't know
Yeah,
if you.
that was the Big Bird story that I had on the screen. Just they were they were just saying that Big Bird was scheduled to be on the fake flight, as it were, and it may have been the end of Big Bird. So that I just I was curious why my friend had brought that up just this week, and I wondered if it was a random post that he had found or if it was being promoted again to tie in with the Challenger story, because I think that story was last month with Stu Peters, he would have elevated that
Okay.
to a
Okay,
level,
that
so
that
mhm.
you're bringing up the timing of this coming out, and that is
Yeah,
something that we have talked about. Two reasons, or two things here. One, it would make sense that they would have had Big Bird on that show, on that tragedy, because
right.
they made it a point to kill a teacher, and they used this event to traumatize children. This was the whole purpose of it, I believe, and it was like every school child at that time saw the Challenger explosion, and their teacher said a teacher died, and all the kids cry. Imagine if they had killed Big Bird. Like that was probably intended to be part of the psyop. But also, though, right now we're looking at the Boeing Starliner stranded in space, which has
Yeah,
all
I'm
kinds
not
of.
following that story, so you're
Yeah,
following that story? Okay, that's interesting.
well, it starts really with Leave the World Behind and planes falling. And then all these news stories about Boeing planes having all kinds of incidents, Boeing whistleblowers getting killed, Boeing CEO let go with a $33
Mhm.
million separation package. And so I'm like, wait, Boeing is cursed. Watch the Boeing Starliner. It was delayed, delayed, delayed. They finally launch it. They had thruster issues. They couldn't dock. When they got on, they had to hunker down because of space junk. And now apparently they're stranded, and NASA's saying they're not stranded, but they are stranded. They aired some distress scenario, which was a drill, they say, but they first aired it as real. So, in other words, this Boeing mission has been a nonstop disaster waiting to happen. And then a couple days ago, some scientist comes out and he compares it to Apollo 13, where you had astronauts en route to the moon having an oxygen tank failure and they
Okay.
had to abort. So what we're seeing here, I believe, is maybe they're setting the stage for some kind of a Boeing Starliner disaster. So they're bringing back the Challenger stuff right now, perhaps to pre-debunk things or something. But it's certainly timing wise, it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not following the story, but I do hear it through your show and the No Agenda show, which I also listen to. And maybe they're hyping it because of this new movie. I believe the movie's coming out on 7/11, although some people say they've already seen it, so maybe it's pre-released in some major cities. But
What movie? What movie is that?
well, Fly what is it? Fly Me to the Moon?
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. Is that supposed to come out on 7/11? Is that the anniversary of Apollo 11, I believe?
7/11 is the anniversary of Skylab falling to the Earth,
Oh, okay.
and a couple other things here too. I think we're looking at the Boeing Starliner craft. The capsule is called Calypso, and
Mhm.
Calypso is the nymph who kept Odysseus stranded for 7 years after the Trojan War before he could begin his odyssey to go back home. So the stranded theme here, Calypso, and then
Mm.
this connects to Space Odyssey. And the movie 2001 Space Odyssey has predictive programming for 9/11, and in my view, for the space station taking a fall.
Yes, you've been talking about that for, a couple of years now, for sure.
Yeah, in fact, I had pointed out that it would likely be Russia's fault. And
Mhm.
interestingly, a Russian satellite exploded last week and the space junk parts cause the astronauts to duck for cover. And this was also a theme in that new movie by Francis Ford Coppola, Megaopolis, about a New York, but it has this theme of an old Russian satellite. And then the ISS movie that came out last January is
Mhm.
about Russia nuking America and the Russians and Americans in the space station fighting. So there's this thing in the air right now about the space station. And so the Boeing theme tied into it is just really intriguing here.
Yeah, the No Agenda show is just talking about Boeing, how maybe they didn't pay some kind of dues or they're not spending enough on congressmen and they're being shaken down right now. Are they trying to just crash the stock so they can pick it up cheap? There's some financial angles with the whole Boeing story that they're trying to shake the company down.
There has to be. In fact, I'll have to look deeper into it from that mundane
Mhm.
level because there's
Yeah.
multiple levels to the story. But we're looking at it from leave the world behind as Babylon falls, the internet falls, space station or the airplanes, everything's just falling from the sky. And then this is mirrored in reality with these incidents happening with airplanes consistently. And so we're picking up this theme, and I saw this Boeing Starliner, and I'm like, okay, there's no way this gets off the ground without some kind of disaster. So we were watching it, expecting disaster after disaster. And sure enough, even though it hasn't been spectacular, it has been this consistent buildup. And so we're looking at this thing very much like potential Apollo 13 at the moment, and they're trying to downplay the idea that they're stranded.
Mhm, mhm.
And
Yeah, well, they're trying to create some drama. They need a story, and, we thrive off stories, and this is we got some tension in it. The Steve Stitch. Steve Stitch, NASA's commercial crew manager, program manager. Do we believe any of these people are real? Steve Stitch, is he the guy that stitches together the pictures of Earth? Because as we know, we have to stitch them together according to the official story.
yeah, people may not know this, but your globe is basically a Frankenstein. You
Mhm.
don't have a single picture of it. Everything is a composite.
Yeah,
Eh,
that's right. Is this Africa in the background? I mean, what are we looking at here? Is this a real picture of Africa, or is it just more, Matt Powerland artwork?
Well, let me point out something about this picture. You're looking
Mhm.
at the capsule, and then you see Africa down below. So you can presumably see 280 miles or something with
Right,
clarity. You can
yeah.
see geologic features. If it was
I
night, you would
think
see
I see a
cities.
McDonald's down there.
Practically, that's the level of detail. Now, when you look at a spacewalk, the light diffuses. It's called light loss,
Right.
and it diffuses in a way that it only could if the spacewalks were being videoed underwater. If you look
Yes,
at
I heard you
scuba
say that.
divers, yeah, the phrase is light loss. Light loss debunks ISS space station walks, spacewalks.
Yeah. Well, this NASA farce, this NASA movie, just it's a movie in real time where they're portraying it as real, and then they have movies. So our brains are just blending the two into our reality.
Yeah, I believe that's ultimately, and so this is the Calypso. Again,
Mhm,
Odyssey, Odysseus, Space Odyssey 2001. I happen to think that the Space Odyssey is code
mhm,
for inner space, mind control. How do they control our mind? By merging it with the movie world, controlling our subconscious, and then putting us into their frame, their stage, their worldview. So I think 2001: A Space Odyssey is two into one, like the Twin Towers now replaced by one, and it
mhm,
represents, I think, the fusion of the two worlds, the inner world that they give us through the movies and the entertainment, and then the real thing. And I think they have perfectly merged the two to where, yeah, for all intents and purposes, the ISS is a 20 plus year reality TV show, but everybody thinks it's real because we've been put into this alternate reality game. They've merged the two successfully. So I see this, various people, like I think the guy from who used to own Twitter, Jack, what's his name?
Jack Dorsey, yeah.
Jack Dorsey was talking about deepfake technology is getting so incredible and so difficult to tell that reality is going to be compromised in the future. And it's like these people are speaking as though this hadn't already been accomplished as a goal decades ago.
Yeah. Speaking of, platforms, alternative platforms, because I know you're up to date on all of them. Didn't Jack Dorsey start something, another platform with the name Blue in it? I was getting kind of excited about a lot of these alternative platforms to Twitter when Twitter was busy censoring everyone before they started a policy of freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. And I think it was called Blue Notes or Blue
Blue
Sky.
Sky, yeah, Blue Sky, and then he left Blue Sky, and now he's going. These are decentralized social media, and now he's going to like Nostr or
Yeah,
Nostr.
Nostr, yeah. I signed up for that for a while, but as I heard of the discussion on how they wanted to implement these, it really became clear that they almost had to centralize because the decentralizing had all kinds of pitfalls and problems. So it almost seemed like they create these opposite thesis, antithesis models, and they end up with a thesis in the end. They almost always seem to circle back to where they started from. So, are any of these platforms like Facebook Threads that we heard about in the past, are any of them going concerns? Or are they all on the verge of being shut down because no one's going there?
I think they're deserts, and I look at X though,
Mhm,
and I look at the X as a cross because I've
mhm.
said even before Musk ever talked about buying X, I was saying one of his roles on the world stage is Constantine, that the Mars program represents feudalism, space communism, always has
Right.
been.
Yeah.
And one of his objectives is to consolidate a new Bible, which is essentially the media in our smartphone, stripped of all the mis and dis and malinformation that they don't want us to have. So the
Yeah.
perfected version that gives us our worldview is the new Bible. And that's his objective. So X, when he bought X, he put the big glowing cross in the building. Well, Constantine had a vision of a glowing cross, and he said, "Under this sign, I will unite the empire." And this is when Musk said, "This is the everything app." And he's had these grandiose ideas for everything. Your banking, your dating, everything goes into this one app.
Yeah.
But we're talking about consolidation of information and the symbol of the X, the cross, ancient symbol, ties into space X. And I'm thinking here that I think what we're really seeing with X is um, I guess they're using it for a few reasons. One of them is, of course, to disseminate a lot of mis and dangerous information from the eyes of the public so they can demonize it and engage in more censorship because Musk is obviously a fall guy taking a hit. But I think largely X is about dominating the marketplace, getting everybody on the same sheet in a very unfair way, obviously, but they need us centralized so that they can manipulate us in a uniform way.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to get people to any website at all outside of the big ones like YouTube and Facebook, where a lot of and Instagram, where a lot of the people just identify that those platforms as the internet. They don't even really realize you can type in a website directly into a URL bar. I think most people start at Google. Google was so successful getting everyone to go to their website, and that's how you found other websites. They didn't even know you could just type in an address, let alone an IP address to go to websites. So they've been really successful at corralling people on their individual sites. I like X only because there seems to be well, I guess they feed me really well at some of the topics I'm interested in, and they distract me from I follow about 2,000 different people, and I only get the same 10 people all the time. So they're really good at feeding me what I think I want and keeping me away from maybe some of the other 1,000 people I follow. And it's just they know people have a limited attention span, including myself. So I'll go there for a few minutes, get my fill, and forget why I even went. So they're really good at corralling.
Yes, absolutely. It is definitely about see because I've been saying that space is a metaphor for the mind control,
Mm,
right? And what they're doing is they're controlling corralling our thoughts and keeping us within a certain box. And this is connected to X because X is about cyberspace and our
mhm,
mind space, our shared mind space. And just as Musk is allowing it to be contaminated, this is why I call it disease X.
mhm,
They're also pointing out that he's leading the world in contaminating outer space, low Earth orbit with space junk. So this correlation is this: the commons. If we let one rich guy screw up low Earth orbit, it messes it up for all mankind. If we let one rich guy buy cyberspace with X, buy a big chunk of it, then he can contaminate all of mind space with mind junk. It's too much power in one person's hands. So I think they're trying to illustrate something here. about the need to have a sanitized shared commons, and the need for censorship for our own protection because disease X. They've been building this story up for some time. And I think ultimately that's the reason why Musk has X. I think it's part of mind control. It's part of the space program, the inner space program.
Yeah, it's amazing how one guy could be responsible for all these influential companies. How does he even manage his time? How can he even think about electric cars and free speech and Twitter and rockets? Does it really make sense that one person has the ability to multitask all these really trend-setting important corporations all at once? Like, who has a brain for that? Who has the time? Who has the interest or the energy? It's beyond reasonable in my mind that one person could be doing all this. It's almost as crazy as having an 81-year-old who should be in a senior's home being a president. It doesn't even logically make sense.
It doesn't, does it? And you look at his role in all this on the world stage, and he's like this villain to the left, savior to the right, kind of like Bill
Mm.
Gates, savior to the left, villain to the right. And recently, we've had space junk from SpaceX landing in North Carolina, out in some farms. And then you had a piece of space junk from NASA hitting home in Florida, and they're suing NASA for mental anguish and for damage to their house for $90,000. So they've made space junk a real thing. They've turned it into a regular occurring thing, and nobody questions it.
Yeah, because you mentioned X and because, we talked about Justin Roberts, maybe Twitter served me a Justin Robert tweet. I wouldn't put it past it. My Google phone is listening to this podcast probably. And, yeah, this Justin Roberts is doing a couple of things. It looks like I haven't been able to read it while I'm talking to you, but definitely he's focusing on the ISS, NASA, Challenger. I think he's got some anti-vax material in here as well. And this is his timeline on Twitter right now. So he's really bringing a lot of issues to the forefront.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate what he's doing. Although, I have a different approach. I happen to think that it's not enough to say this is fake, that is fake, handing out white pills and pointing out singular issues. I think this is more about the approach to media itself. It's a question of epistemology. Do we automatically believe what we see on the screen, and why? That way, it's like the glasses on They Live. Once you have it on, you see through it all. You don't need somebody to point out every single fake event and everything, every subtle meaning behind each sign. And so, like, I'm looking for the root cause, the roots, the basic frame of reference that gets everybody in the wrong. And to me, NASA is a huge part of that. Sure, it's hard for people to make that leap, but the ISS, I happen to think it's their Achilles heel because its special effects are stuck in 2015. And then I saw the new Chinese space station. And I'm like, okay, maybe they're going to improve their special effects and then phase out the ISS. And no, I don't know if you've looked, but the Chinese space station special effects are even worse.
Mhm.
I call it the ISS you get if you order it on Wish.
Mhm. Yeah, or Temu. All
Yeah,
right. You got about 15, 20 minutes left. I like to keep these shows to about an hour on my end. I know usually go a couple hours, I think, on your show.
yeah. When I have time, I'd like to go even 2.5 hours if we have callers, and we've been getting pretty active lately. But yeah, we still have a few more minutes, so I guess if anyone has any comments in the chat, we should address those.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. You're also on Discord, so you can subscribe to Tim Osman on Patreon. Is that your main place that you receive donations?
Oh yes, yeah. I send people to Patreon or IPS.monster because it's the IPS site that has all the links,
Mhm.
and people can, by becoming members, they can get live notifications, and I send out archives via email and keep the network together.
Yeah, and my page is fakeologist.com/donate. I don't really mind how you donate. I appreciate any donations as a way to keep going, keep FakeoTube funded. That's my alternative video platform. I still maintain I'm up to 8,000 videos there, and I don't leave my archives on YouTube because I just never know year to year what's available, what can be talked about and what cannot be talked about. So it's just easier to delete my videos off YouTube and let that be used as just the live streaming platform since so many people like it. But if you wanna support, I've got some crypto here, PayPal, and just anything and everything you can think of for, receiving money. So I don't do this for the money, but I don't mind defraying costs, and I appreciate any and every donations, and I know, IPS does as well because it really helps encourage and, we don't get advertising, and I'm not an e-beggar, and you really don't e-beg at all either. You hardly ever promote your, um, your site for fundraising to help support the site either, so
I would like to eventually move into 'cause my next phase here is the tabloid. Having publishing again do the majority of the funding of this because
mhm,
it is a costly endeavor for sure, and time and research, but it's worth it. The results we get are worth it, and it's worth preserving this. And I've had a few low points financially because of the way the channel's been targeted, but in the last 6 months or so, the IPS channel has been monetized, which is very helpful. I don't
yeah.
store videos there, but it adds up and it makes a big deal. It means I don't have to worry about paying the internet at a minimum.
So
So yeah,
YouTube is monetized? You actually make money off YouTube?
yeah, and I don't
Oh,
know
okay.
if it's because I'm suing them right now, but for some reason, yeah, I've been monetized on YouTube, and it's covered like more than half of the operational costs, including the rent at the office.
Oh, that's great. So how do you get so is that just people watching your videos or they run ads on your videos? How does that work these days?
I'm sorry, I got distracted by a comment here. He said, "Why call it a tabloid? So you're calling it something known to be all BS." If you haven't seen Men in Black, what Tommy Lee Jones says about the sheets, you wouldn't know, but it's a reference to Men in Black, and that you'll learn more about it later. But the idea that calling it a tabloid is somehow discrediting. Have you seen mainstream media? I mean, we're making a bigger point here. And then who do you think my audience is? Who are we writing for? People who have
Oh,
already
is he
figured
just
stuff
saying
out.
that okay, I don't know what he's talking about because my only concern is does anyone read the printed word? So you're thinking of printing it on newsprint?
Oh yeah, I already have an arrangement with the printer. I've done dry runs and I have the distribution. It's just a matter of content, and I have writers now. So this has been a project that it's been launched a few times in a test form, and I'm ready to produce it full time. And I think it's economically viable.
Okay.
I'll be releasing it here in the next couple of weeks here, but it's been something I've had on the wing for some time. But it's pretty simple. It's basically a template in Canva, export to the printer, deliver
Okay.
anywhere in the world in under 24 to 48 hours. But I've had very good results with them. We have a
Well, that's
distribution
good.
channel.
'Cause
And I'm,
our local penny saver just shut down. Even the flyer, newspaper we used to get, they can't make money.
I'm not going to call it a magazine. I'm not going to try to curry favor with mainstream. I'm not trying to fit in, and I'm certainly not trying to gain approval from the brainwashed. We're keeping it a tabloid for a strategic reason. So I'm just explaining to the person who's asking why call it a tabloid. There are some people who are just too sensitive about how they're perceived by the brainwashed, and those aren't the people you should be concerned with. You should be concerned with aggregating the people who've already figured this thing out. I mean, how many fakeologists out there are there? How many skeptics are there? It's hard to
Not
tell.
enough. Yeah, there's not enough, that's for sure. That's why I like to piggyback on your big audience as well, and, uh,
Well, I
and
think we need
pool
we
resources.
well, we have to exactly we have to pull our numbers together and figure out how many. And I have a theory, and I'm going to use this tabloid to kind of flesh this out. But I happen to think that you look at the mainstream and alternative, but outside of that, is there a body of people that's comparable to the alternative media? Like, no way. The number of skeptics are going to be, I think, magnitudes smaller than the number of truthers. But that's fine with me. You know, even if it's only 50,000 people who are appreciative of media fakery on this level, who analyze it with this perspective, to me, that's a sizable number of people. And it makes more sense to consolidate around that in principle than mixing in with Trutherville, which is just nothing but misinformation and clickbait these days.
Yeah, well, I listen to the No Agenda show, as I've told many people, and they're not fakeologists or auto hoaxers, but they're skeptical about the message they're getting. And I recently ran a test on there where I made a donation and gave out my phone number, and I got about 400 replies that they heard the message. That's all I was looking for, which is a lot for to motivate people to actually send a text by punching in a phone number. So I was quite pleased, and I did get at least one guy call in a couple times, and he never really heard our point of view because he's a mainstream media consumer. So sometimes you have to draw them in one at a time, which seems like an awesome task, but there are,
Yeah.
as you said, many, many more skeptics to what they're being told. But man, when you go down the rabbit hole or try and drag them down, it's quite interesting. So,
Yeah, I think it's not an oversimplification to say you have the programmed, the programmers, and the deprogrammed. And the
mhm.
deprogrammed are self-deprogrammed. No one can do it for you, and that's why I say it doesn't make sense to try to reach those people. The ones who are plugged in and happy are unreachable. The wokers, the truthers who are engaged in infowar, are the last ones who want to hear about how fake things are. But those who've already figured it out need their own platform. And so I've used the term parallel media to describe the space that we're going to occupy.
Mhm.
And that's going to be a place for media skeptics, auto hoaxers, fakeologists, people who know what's going on, who aren't caught up with any of the truth or orthodoxies, which is why I'm making it a point to go after a lot of these various guardrail and false explanations, because we're trying to build our own demographic outside of their box.
Now, where do you maintain most of your research material? Is it on Minds or is it on Discord?
Yeah, we do our live research on Gilded, but
Mhm.
on
Okay.
minds.com/infinite plane society, I have links and screen caps of whatever we're discussing, and that comes from everywhere, whether it's Gilded, Discord, Twitter, YouTube, or emails directly to me. So if you go to
Mhm.
minds.com/infinite plane society, you'll see exactly what we're talking about. You can keep your finger on the pulse.
Right, and we were talking at the beginning of the show about chemtrails, and that sort of flared up on my site for a while. I've Most of the people on my site believe in chemtrails, and they chide me for not believing. I take your position. I think it's a very sound position, so I usually just refer them to your position to get my position. But, man, do I ever, get a lot of blowback on that one.
Here's what I would ask them, because they'll say, "Oh, you don't believe in chemtrails?" And I would ask them, "Well, why don't you know for a fact? Why are you satisfied with merely believing?" And that's the burden of proof that they're unwilling to take. And a lot of people get mad when you shift the burden and you say, "Until you provide it, I'm not going to believe." And yeah, non-believers have always caught flack. I mean, non-believers get burned, hanged,
Yeah.
stoned, exiled. We've never been liked.
Yeah, well, again, I don't know why people are so hung up on that, on the chemtrails. I guess they figure if I don't believe in them, they shouldn't listen to anything I have to say, so it's really interesting how that one gets so much attention.
It's a make or break issue with a lot of people. And I've tried to figure this out as well. And I think there's some psychological components to it. For one, it's the only visual evidence of your oppression that you have. For
Mhm,
a lot of these people, they don't have evidence that where's the UN troops, where's the FEMA camps, where's the men and they don't have black helicopters, they don't have anything. But then you see these trails, and you're like, okay, physical evidence that I'm being oppressed. 5G towers, more of it. So I think it's kind of what you call a hyperstition, and it's become very real to them. And then it builds in to their frame the idea of a they who have
mm,
malevolence and they can control the weather. And then it always blames the government, the secret government. And this is interesting because it's a mirror of climate change. But climate change blames the private sector and capitalism. But it's the same thing. They
mhm,
see everything as a threat to the world. Big trucks, scary. Carbon footprints, scary. And it's just fear. And so I happen to think that the reason why it's so popular is that it's funded. All this money that we see going into NASA,
mhm.
it's all to control our minds. Well, I think there's a lot of funding that goes into chemtrail belief, just as there is for climate change belief. I think it's literally that paid agents, operatives disseminating disinformation, and it's done so in a very strategic way. And that's why nobody knows for sure. They only believe because there aren't any facts to back it. But it's very popular because somebody's paying for it.
I see that, and I know you follow or have followed in the past. David Weiss is definitely doing the rounds on some of the major mainstream alternative media sites.
Oh yeah, he has Roseanne Barr talking about infinite plane and well not they don't say infinite plane, but they say more
Mhm.
land,
Okay.
extra continents. Yeah, and
Do you think you could
that's
get on Roseanne Barr on her show?
I hadn't considered it before. I don't
That'd be a
know.
huge boost. I think you'd do very well on that show.
I wouldn't want to talk about flat Earth necessarily with her, but I would like to talk to her about, if anything, the role of I guess, comedians and fringe ideas and the gatekeeping of the public mind. Because you'll notice, even outside conspiracy theories, it's always the comedians who are allowed to say things that are just beyond the pale, and then
Yeah,
society reacts. So
that's
I
because
think
you
it,
can laugh at it. Yeah.
yep. And then, yeah, then it puts in a safe space where you can just laugh at it, and you couldn't say that in any other context. It would be interesting.
Mhm.
I don't know, though. I don't know. I assume I'm off limits. I feel like
I
I'm just
don't
blacklisted.
Yeah, well, she talked to a guy named Sean Ross who talks about, Pharaoh and the bloodlines, and, I talked to that guy, he was very hard to get a hold of, in the last week. So she does go to some very different places. I'm not saying Sean Ross is a safe guest for people like Roseanne, because he's
Okay.
really different, so I think that's the main reason I think she'd talk to you, because if she talks to Sean Ross, who is talking about some really interesting topics about who runs the world and money and bloodlines, I think that she seems pretty open to different ideas. I don't know where her podcast is, I guess I could look it up, but I did listen to that her talk to Sean Ross, and now she's got, David Weiss on, so I might just listen to that as well.
Well, if she got David Weiss on, then yeah, the bar's not too high. I should
Yeah.
probably make an effort.
Yeah, well, that would probably catapult you to a different level, I would say, because I think she has a pretty good following, and she does sorta have this rogue actor element to her that, she's always going against Hollywood, whether that's true or not, I don't know.
It's hard to say because see, we're coming from the bottom of this. We're not in their media pyramid, and then she's been at the top of it. And when someone wakes up or comes to these realizations about how fake things are, you're like, well, they came from their own echo chamber. You can't assume they're controlled opposition. They just have a different frame of reference, and so there may be some value there to talk to. But or they could be a gatekeeper. It's I don't
Yeah.
approach these things with that paranoia in mind, but I do want to know where they're coming from. And yeah, she seems rogue to me. She says too many things that are I'm not gonna say unhinged, but if she was being handled, I think a lot of these things would be off limits.
Well, as these people get older, do you think they have less to lose because they have less years to be here? So maybe they're not looking for their next gig anymore. Maybe they're just coasting to the finish line and they can say many more things.
Could be. Von Braun supposedly gave out the scripts for the future on his deathbed to
Oh,
his
did he?
secretary. Oh yeah, to his secretary on his deathbed. He told her about they're going to fake climate change, asteroids, and aliens, and in
Oh,
that
okay.
order.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it was some kind of deathbed confessional that she recounted, and so that's a possibility. But I would be I'd be interested in seeing if they could pull that off these days. But you brought up this Samsung phone and how they faked the moon. I'm starting to think that
Mm.
they could probably pull it off at this stage.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's what I guess you call augmented reality, where they're using technology just to fill in the blanks where they want to fool you on a different level, a more complete level, a more all encompassing level, maybe. I'm not sure, but, I'd have to take some more pictures of the next full moon, so I'll look out for it and do more experimentation. I have an iPhone as well, so I'll try that one too and see if
Yeah,
there's any, because I think they have similar lenses, if nothing else.
but we're just describing a Project Bluebeam scenario. But
Mhm.
instead of it being literally projected onto the ionosphere or something. It's actually coming from your own device in some way.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've been going about an hour. If you've, got anything else or not too much, no action on the phone lines tonight, so I'm gonna shut them down, but,
Thanks for
we'll
having me on. I appreciate this. And we should do more updates periodically. Just so you know, as far as numbers go,
yeah.
we've got about 130 on my platforms and then about 25 or 30 on the audio streams that I can count here. So there's about 160 people on the IPS side. So where would you want to send them right now? If you can get them all to go to one link, and then I'll post it in the chat.
Oh, the best link is fakeologist.com. I really appreciate that. Fakeologist.com. That's my hub. It's always been the hub. That's where you can fork off onto all the different sites. I have a forums. I have a video platform. I have past podcasts where we have these things called audio chats where I record and broadcast just different voices that want to chat about our topics and broadcast and talk to each other. It's a moderated Discord, so you have to actually have a voice and check in with the moderator to make sure you're a real person. But those are very popular. We call them audio chats, and they're usually on the weekend, and they're usually dominated by Australians, which I find fascinating compared to say Canadians. There's really no Canadians, and there are a few Americans for sure, but Australians are just such an interesting group of people. They're really, they do you have a lot of Australians on IPS?
We do. We do, and we have quite a few. And at first, I was kind of surprised about it. I was like, "What is this overlap?" But no, there's actually quite a lot. In fact, it's maybe because a lot of the early flat Earth channels were also Canadian. I think there was quite a few, but whatever the reason, it is the case. We are pretty much everywhere if you think about it. We have a lot of people in Australia, probably some Antarcticans listening quietly. We have some Beartarians apparently. Somebody in my stream passes out these gift memberships on YouTube, and so
Okay.
if you're just lurking and you're in the live stream and somebody buys random memberships, it will put your name on the screen. So and so received a Blue Wrench Lodge membership, and I saw a bunch of bears getting wrenches, which is great. Bear gwins, not a bad
So,
combination.
getting back to YouTube, do you leave your videos up on YouTube? Is that how you generate money? Because they watch those videos? Or is it your lives that generate money?
It's
How does that
the
work with
lives.
YouTube?
It's the lives, and I generate memberships and super chat, and then I delete the videos and I upload
Okay.
them on my backup. I don't keep them up there at all. I don't trust YouTube. I have a feeling the only reason they tolerate me is because we're in the middle of the run up to a lawsuit. And the next update for that, by the way, will be on the 22nd. That's when our pre-trial meeting is.
Okay, so you think they're just, placating you or just, assuaging you,
I think so.
basically?
I think they know I was mad, and they think they can appease me. And one of their attorneys on the phone even asked me if I would drop it, since it's really between me and this other third party. But no, it's this third party using them to get at me. So no, they aren't being left out of it. But yeah, I think that there may be a strategic reason because all of my YouTube channels were just suddenly enabled for monetization after 6 years. I'm like, that's weird.
Alright, I'll look into it. So the live is what generates the super chats and the income, and, that's very interesting. So I'll look into it for myself. I
It's
don't know
doable.
so
It really is. If you're quick on the draw, you delete it right after, clean up your misinformation after yourself, you can make
yes.
money there. So thanks for having me on, and we'll talk soon.
Alright, thanks, Tim Ozman of IPS.monster. That's your main hub, I believe, right?
That's correct. That's the place that gets you all the links and the links to our Discord and Gilded.
Alright, well, thanks, IPS, and, join IPS's, Patreon, go to his website, and listen to his shows. He's on many platforms. I get you off Odyssey because your videos, when you put them on there, come onto my phone automatically. So I find that's the best place to get IPS.monster in your video shows. So thanks a lot and come back soon. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. This has been the Fakeologist Show. I hope you guys have enjoyed yourselves. We do this show Sunday through Thursday for about an hour. That's about enough for most people. And thanks to the huge IPS audience, you guys are great. And feel free to check out fakeologist.com, join our forums, join our Discord. We're friendly here too. I'm a patron of IPS. I believe all content creators should be supported, and it's only $2 or $3 a month. That's nothing. Has anyone bought a coffee lately in this inflationary era, or a hamburger? I'm hearing people say that hamburgers are $20. Now, I usually don't buy hamburgers. I usually make them myself, but yeah, with with those kind of numbers, $2-3 a month for your favorite show, it's a no-brainer. So if everyone, as they say, gave $2 or $3 a month, then that would really make these shows really sustainable and successful. So make sure you support independent content creation. All right, I may be back on my own show this week. It is the summertime. It is hot out. The water is warm. So check in at fakeologist.com/live. We have a Google Calendar there where I try and keep that current. So if we're on, we're on. If we're not, I usually delete the day's entry. So check it out. And thanks for listening. And this show is free to download and free to share. Make sure you share it. And we don't have a paywall here. We just ask for value, as I've said many times. So take care. Thanks to the IPS audience one more time. And we'll see you here back next time.